Imagine a bustling workshop where every task is sliced into tiny fragments, each guarded jealously by a different trade. In a sprawling city factory, welders refuse to touch a bolt. That's the domain of mechanics. A painter won't shift a IMO ladder. That's for the laborers alone. A machinist won't even glance at a rusty pipe, leaving it to the plumbers. Disputes flare over who gets to tighten a screw or flip a lever, with rival groups staking fierce claims to these slivers of work. In one striking case, documented by a major shipping company, rules dictate that even pressing a button or adjusting a gauge belongs solely to one crew. If someone from another team dares to step in during their shift, they're owed a bonus, day's pay, and the rightful workers, sidelined, demand a day's wages too, for doing nothing at all. This tangled web stems from a deep-rooted misconception that smarter, faster ways to finish a task kill opportunities, while clumsy, drawn-out methods somehow conjure them. It's tied to the notion that the world holds only a finite pile of toil, and if efficiency can't be undone, then the heap must be stretched thin across as many hands as possible. But here's where the reasoning frays. Splitting work into ever smaller pieces might pad a few pockets briefly, if it's just one trade pulling the trick. Scale it up, though, and the flaws glare. Costs balloon, output shrinks, and the bounty of goods dwindles. Picture a shopkeeper hiring 2 workers to mend a flickering light when one could do it. Sure, an extra pair of hands gets paid, but that's cash no longer free to order a new shelf. The electrician's gain is the carpenter's loss. The shopkeeper ends up with a fixed light but no shelf, and the broader market misses a piece of its wealth. Beyond this, other tactics emerge to share the load, often championed by trade, coalitions, or lawmakers. A common pitch is to trim the work week, backed by decrees. The idea that capping hours spreads jobs fueled laws demanding steep overtime pay past a set limit. Say, a 50% bump after 35 hours. Older rules once capped shifts for certain groups, rooted in worries about exhaustion or morale. Some argued long stints dulled efficiency, but the modern twist, say, punishing extra hours with premium rates, aims less at health and more at nudging employers to hire more bodies. Today, proposals swirl to dodge joblessness with a mandated 25-hour week. What happens when these plans take hold? Consider 2 paths. First, picture a week dropping from 40 hours to 30, wages per hour unchanged. If joblessness looms large, this might spark new hires. But expecting it to match the old tally of hours and pay assumes a perfect balance. Every field equally idle, every newcomer as deft as the veterans. Even then, with more workers clocking fewer hours, total effort holds steady. Output barely budges, paychecks don't grow, and the gain is a mirage. The veterans, earning less for less time, effectively prop up the newcomers' wages. A forced trade-off, not a choice born of leisure's appeal. Now, flip the script. Cut the week to 30 hours but hike hourly pay to keep weekly earnings level. Say, from $50 for 40 hours to $167 an hour for 30. Costs leap. If workers once earned below what production could bear, they could have won that raise without slashing hours. Instead, this forced spike, say a 33% jump, outruns what prices and output can sustain, especially if joblessness hints they were already overpaid. The fallout? Struggling firms fold, weaker hands lose work, and production sags. Prices might climb with scarcer goods, yet demand could dip with fewer jobs. Money policies might meddle, printing cash to prop up prices, but that just masks the drop in real buying power, looping back to the first case's outcome. These spread-the-load dreams lean on shaky ground. They spotlight the lucky few who snag extra shifts while ignoring the wider toll. They cling to the fable of a fixed work stash, when in truth, human wants, met by labor, are boundless. The most work flows when costs, prices, and wages align, a harmony we'll explore later. Shift the lens to a nation after conflict, shedding its legions of troops, or a bloated office shedding clerks. Panic rises. Where will the jobs come from? If budgets balance, it's clear. Taxes once funneled to soldiers or staff revert to citizens. Their spending lifts demand, soaking up the freed hands. If deficits propped up the ranks, the fix is still simple. Cut taxes, keep the gap. Either way, these aren't just burdens swapped. their souls turning productive. Soldiers don't stay dependents, they forge goods or services. Clerks, once surplus, now fuel real value, not paper shuffling. Waste. Taxpayers gain more than they lose, and wealth climbs. The cry of lost purchasing power when cutting excess rings hollow. A bandit's haul boosts their spending, saloon keepers and tailors cheer, but it drains yours. So too with unneeded staff, their pay creates no net gain, just a shuffle. When taxes fund folly, nothing comes back. If keeping their cash flow is the best defense, it's time to let go. True keepers of order, guards, medics, builders, earn their keep. The rest, a drag on the engine, not its fuel.